This video demonstrates how to replace floating guide in ironwood socket. Right now we are seeing the back side of the socket. The first step is to put a small tape on the edge of the two guides. There are three guides typically in a socket: bottom guide, middle guide, and a floating guide. The tape is put around both bottom and the middle guide. That is what retains the pin. So when we remove them, you have to remove both the bottom and the middle guide together. That way the pins will not come loose. So there are multiple screws that connects the bottom guide to the socket base. We are going to remove those screws now. Use the right tool. It is just put in place to hold the bottom middle guide to the socket base. Once when we remove the screws, we have to carefully take both the bottom and the middle guide together. That is why we put a tape on the edge, so that we don't accidentally separate bottom guide by itself. But if we separate the bottom guide by itself, then the pins will come loose. Then we have to carefully assemble the bottom guide back on. Now as you can see, both guides are removed, the pins are all intact, and now we can keep that part separately by down, so there is nothing will come loose. There are floating guide springs in there. You can see they are standing in there. We have to remove all those springs out. There are approximately, in some sockets there will be 4, some sockets there will be 8. So in this particular socket there are 8 of them. This is what keeps the floating guide standing above inside the pocket. Now the floating guide will be taken out. We can replace the floating guide with another floating guide, or clean the floating guide, and we can put it back in there. When we put it back in there, look for the right orientation and double pin alignment, and place the floating guide back in place. In order to attach back, we have to place both the top and middle guide on it first. Once when you place that one, we have to carefully align with the double pin, place it in there. Now remove that side tape so that you can separate the middle guide and the bottom guide. Now carefully you have to remove the bottom guide by tapping all the pins to stay in the middle guide. After that, carefully remove the bottom guide and verify if all pins are in place. If any pins got stuck in there, we have to place it back into the middle guide. Now we individually place the floating guide spring in the slots for each one of them. So you can see here that each spring is placed in the spring holes that goes through the middle guide and touches the floating guide. Now all the springs are placed inside the hole. Now we have to carefully place the bottom guide on it. You have to be extremely careful because when you align, you have to align with the dowel pins and make sure that countersunk holes are above, and tap so that the pins from the middle guide comes through. Then once when you tap all of them, make sure they are aligned. You can put the screws back into the holes and connect the 3-piece guides to the socket base. So we are putting one screw at a time, holding it in place. No pins are bent, and that is how the sockets are being assembled and replaced with the floating guide. Thank you.